Hi, everyone. Again, apologies that we're starting just a little bit late. We're having some technical difficulties. Appreciate everybody hanging in there with us. And we'll get started in just a little bit. Looks like the numbers are slowing down. So I think with that, we will go ahead and get started. So first, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. And before we really get started, I'd like to introduce our Spanish interpreters. I believe we have 2 of them on here today to provide language translation instructions for you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We'll provide that now for our Spanish-speaking audience. Muy buenas tardes a todos que nos acompañan esta tarde. Queremos dejarles saber que tenemos interpretación al vivo disponible para el programa. En breve aparecerá en la parte inferior de su pantalla un icono con un globo que dice Interpretation o Interpretación. Selecciónelo y luego seleccione su idioma Spanish o español. De ahí podrá escuchar todo el programa en su idioma. And for those listening in English, please note that in the event there's any Spanish questions or comments, you can also hear a live rendering of that or live translation. In a moment, you'll see a globe icon appear at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. Please select it and then select your language, English. This way you can hear a live translation of any Spanish comments or questions. Thank you, Stephanie. Back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Muchas gracias. Give me just a moment here. I was looking for my own globe icon, but I will just bypass that for now. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. This is our 7th monthly evening community meeting, and we're using this opportunity to reflect on the development process for this year, for this year's funding plan, and what it was like for you to collaborate with us this year. My name is Stephanie Parent. I'm the lead staff person for this year's funding plan, and I'm joined this evening by our funding plan team, as well as other CARB staff and management who will provide information about other CARB programs and initiatives that we thought you might be interested in. Here are a few details before we get started. This meeting is being recorded, and it will be available on our meetings and workshops webpage in about 2 weeks, along with the attendee list. Staff will drop a link to that webpage in the chat shortly. All of the meeting materials, like the agenda and the slides, can be found on that webpage as well. And again, staff will put that link in the chat. To be able to ask a question or to provide a comment, please use Zoom's raised hand feature. If there are any disruptions or misuse of Zoom during the meeting, we will end the meeting and reschedule it and notify you of when it will be rescheduled for. For security, we do need your name visible in Zoom. If you called in by telephone, we'll identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number when you raise your hand. Next slide, please. So for today's meeting, we have a few important agreements for CARB staff and attendees to follow. Be respectful. Let's be kind and create a comfortable space for everyone to share their thoughts and experiences. Take space and/or make space. If you're usually quiet, challenge yourself to contribute more. If you talk a lot, leave space and room for others to speak. Listen to understand. Listen without judgment or jumping to conclusions. Consider equity. We aim to develop solutions with fairness and equal treatment in mind. Recognize that not everyone starts from the same place, and some face unique advantages or barriers. Excuse me, I just have a message from the interpreter in the chat, I believe. Oh, okay, if someone could please assign the other interpreter as an interpreter, that would be excellent. The interpreter's name is Leticia Reyna.
All done.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so I was mentioning about considering equity. We aim to develop solutions with fairness and equal treatment in mind. Recognize that not everyone starts from the same place, and some face unique advantages or barriers. People from all over California are here to work together on clean transportation incentives. Each community has its own unique challenges and advantages, making diverse perspectives crucial. Our focus is to overcome barriers as we transition to cleaner transportation and mobility options. With these agreements in mind, let's continue our meeting. Next slide, please. Let's discuss today's agenda. We have our introduction. It was supposed to be until about 5:10. We're running a little bit behind. I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. And then we'll have about 20 minutes to reflect on this year's funding plan process. We'll have about 10 minutes for some poll questions, as well as about 10 minutes for all of you to ask questions as well. Then we'll spend about 20 minutes talking about the state budget as we begin to plan for next year's funding plan development. At about 5:50, we'll hear from CARB staff on the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation and the Zero Emission Vehicle Equity Task Force. We'll take a short break around 6:05, and then we'll hear from CARB staff about project updates on the e-bike project and the Clean Cars for All and Financing Assistance project. Then we'll hear from other CARB staff on funding agricultural replacement measures for emission reductions, also known as farmer, and as well as the Carl Moyer Memorial Attainment Program, or the Carl Moyer Program. And then we'll wrap up and talk about next steps. Next slide, please. So for those who might be new to our evening community meetings, or maybe if you need a quick reminder, the evening community meetings and their purpose. So typically our annual funding plan development process involves daytime public workshops and work group meetings on various incentive projects. However, we understand community members can face unique challenges to attending those daytime meetings compared to people who work in industry, government, or non-government organizations. And so this year we began hosting these evening community meetings to make it easier for community members to engage with us. Our goals for these meetings are to provide a space for community voices and priorities, to brainstorm solutions for clean transportation needs, highlight key funding plan information, and foster ongoing communication between staff and community members. Next slide, please. So the funding plan team wants to ensure that we provide community members with a wide variety of ways to collaborate with us. One way is to participate in these evening community meetings, but we understand that not everyone might feel comfortable speaking in these types of forums. We have an open door policy, and currently are able to schedule meetings with community members or community groups that would like to meet with us one-on-one. And I forgot to update my notes. So we did presented the funding plan to the board in November, and they approved that plan. And then earlier in the year, we did offer a community survey, and we're always taking survey responses. If you want to do that at this time as we gear up for next year's funding plan. And we had analyzed to include those into the funding plan, and then moving forward, any comments we receive, we would try to incorporate into the next year's funding plan as well. And there's a link to the survey in the presentation, as well as the QR code that you could scan with your phone, with the camera on your phone. So now I'll hand things over to my colleague, Matt, to take us into our first question session, in case anybody has questions on technical issues or questions about the slides that I've presented already.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Williams, and I will be facilitating comments and questions this evening. We'll open the floor for everyone to ask questions about logistics, technical issues, or anything that we've covered so far in the presentation. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the webinar feature to raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click on the raise hand option in the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the raise hand option in the More tab. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you based on the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you would like to email us a question, please send it to cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov, which is shown, which we will put into the chat. Please include your name and affiliation along with your question in your email, and when I call on you, we will be monitoring that email inbox, and please let us know if any questions, and we'll let you know if any questions are sent in. For those on Zoom or on the phone, once your line is open, you can begin to speak. Please state your name and affiliation first before providing your question or comment. At this time, I'm not seeing any raised hands. A reminder to everyone in the audience, if you do wish to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raised hand feature, or if you're on the phone, press #2. Stephanie, no questions or comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So hearing that there are no questions, we can move on to the next slide. And so I'm looking at, we should be on slide 7. And I'll hand it over actually to you, Matt.
Got it. Okay, so this year we rolled out a new process with a shorter time frame of 7 months to develop the funding plan. We also combined topics to reduce the overall number of daytime meetings where possible. We moved some information from the funding plan to web pages in an effort to make the plan shorter and easier to read. We'll continue to try to shorten the plan where possible in future years. Lastly, we introduced monthly evening community meetings such as this one to provide you, the community members, with a forum geared towards you. With these changes in our process, we believe that we reached more people than in past years, but we also recognize there is always room for improvement. We'll now show some poll questions in Zoom for about 10 minutes. You can participate in the poll if you want to, but you do not have to. Your feedback helps us to improve upon the process for collaborating with you on future funding plans. A question should show up on your screen. with multiple possible answers. You will be able to select the appropriate answer for you. We'll then show the results of how everyone responded overall for those who answered the question. The results won't show any individual person's information or how they responded. Question 1 should be available now. Question 1 asks, how did you learn about CARB's funding plan process? You may choose one answer. It's looking like the majority came from the website and our email list. Good to know that both of those are working to reach you. Question 1 will remain available, but in the meantime, we will launch. Oh, actually, we do need to close that one first. The answers are static. We will close that now. Our next question for everyone asks, besides this meeting, did you attend any other evening community meetings this year? Looks like we have participation from the majority of participants today. So for a majority of you, this was your first evening community meeting. Welcome. And for the roughly third of you who've attended other meetings this year, glad to have you back. Our next question asks, if you attended any evening community meetings besides this one, did you find them helpful to better understand the proposed funding plan development process? So again, if you did attend previous evening community meetings this year, did you find them helpful to better understand the process of developing our annual funding plan? We'll give this one a few more seconds for people to respond. Looks like people who probably didn't attend previous meetings are selecting I don't know. And I'm guessing that if only people who didn't attend previous meetings selected I don't know, looks like 100% of people who attended previous meetings said yes, that they were helpful in understanding the funding plan development process. This is good, as that was our whole purpose. In question 4, we'd like to know, did you attend any daytime workshops or work groups related to the funding plan this year? We held 2 funding plan workshops, one in the beginning of summer and the other in August. Those workshops talked about the entire funding plan. We also had a number of work groups that focused on specific aspects of the funding plan or programs like that are included in the funding plan, working on the policies that go into the annual funding plan. Great, seeing quite a lot of engagement with the entire process this year. In our next question, this year, our funding plan development process officially began in June. In prior years, staff began the process earlier in the year, as early as February. What did you think about the shorter time frame over which the development happened this year? Again, your answers will help us to understand how we can improve our process in the future and make sure we're maximizing engagement with all of you. Overall, looks like we are a little ambivalent on the time frame. Our next question, what did you think about the ways you could collaborate on the proposed funding plan this year? These collaboration options included evening community meetings, daytime work groups, daytime workshops, the community survey, one-on-one meetings with CARB staff were always available, and the open public comment period, October 6th through November 6th, ahead of the board hearing. Okay, it looks like a good number of people found all of those different engagement options to be helpful. In question 7, what do you think about the ease with which you were able to collaborate on the proposed funding plan this year? Some mixed results. We understand it is a complicated process, a lot of meetings, but this is good to see. Question 8. Does the proposed funding plan address air quality and/or climate change and transportation issues you have been concerned about or are interested in? Okay, very good to see. We are definitely addressing the things on your mind. And I believe this next question is our last. Do you think you will participate in next year's funding plan process? It's looking like a large majority of you plan to participate next year. Very good to see. Fantastic. So it looks like the majority of you plan to join us in the coming fiscal year. Very excited to welcome you back. Stephanie, did you want to talk about any of the poll results before we open it up for questions and comments?
Thanks, Jason, Matt, sorry. No, I think you did a nice job of going through the questions and kind of recapping them. But we'll definitely, take all of that information and see how we can improve things for next year for everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Okay, after that poll and all those questions that we asked, we'll open up the floor for everyone to ask questions of us. If you would like to make a comment or question, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom. Or if you're on the phone, you can press #2 and we'll call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. And give it some time for people to queue up.
And just a friendly reminder while we're waiting for everyone, including panelists, if you're not presenting or speaking, please mute yourself.
Okay, I see a raised hand from Mo. Mo, I have opened your line. You may need to unmute yourself as well, and you may begin your question or comment. Please remember to state your name and affiliation.
Hi, yeah, this is Mo. Hello?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, so I had a question about the core program. Is that something you can discuss when it comes to funding and the funding that you might be looking into when it comes to for 2024?
Stephanie, I assume we are taking questions for all aspects of the funding plan, or is this very specific to a recap of this last year's process?
We can open it up to other questions, seeing that there aren't any other raised hands right now.
Okay, Mo, what's your question?
Yeah, so it's just in regards to if funding is going to continue the same way as it did for this year, for the following year, when it comes to the different business markets, agriculture, landscaping, and so on and so forth. And if you can provide a little bit more details around if it's going to stay the same when it comes to eligibility, the amount that's going to be available, small business related incentives, and so on and so forth.
Hi, Mo. This is Todd Sterling. I'm at lead staff for the core program. And last year we received about $273 million from the legislature. This year, not quite as much. Would drop down to 0. So next year's core may look a little different. We've already had one work group meeting to talk about the funding plan moving forward. CARB was able to scrape together about $14 million for next year. We also have some left over from the previous year. We're looking at maybe just small businesses. We're looking at maybe condensing some of the categories down. We'll be having some work group meetings here in the early 2024 before we launch again, probably in summer 2024. So that's for the heavy duty. For the pro landscaping side, you mentioned that also. Currently, we are out of funding. The legislature gave us $30 million through SB 170 that was able to fund about $30 million towards small business landscapers. That funding has expired. But if you're interested in that, there are districts throughout the state that receive funding through the Carl Moyer reserve funds that have or will have programs opening up here shortly, or have a program open up right now. So a couple different things. Mo, if you have other specific questions about CORE, more than happy to answer them. You can send me an email at todd.sterling@arb.ca.gov. I'll also drop that in the chat. So if you or anybody else has questions about CORE, but don't want to talk about them in the meeting, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Todd. As a reminder, if you do have a comment or question, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom. If you're on a mobile app, that will be in the More section. Just click the 3 dots and then raise hand. And if you are on the phone, the #2 is how you can raise your hand. Not seeing any further comments or questions at this time, so I will hand it off to Grace.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everyone. My name is Graciela Garcia, and I'm a staff air pollution specialist here at CARB. So today I'm going to give a quick overview of the state budget and how it overlaps with our annual funding plan development. In addition, I'm also going to talk about CARB's role in this process, and my hope is to also provide you all with some helpful resources and some information about how you all can participate in the state budget process. So each year, the state budget process kicks off with the release of the governor's proposed January budget. The release of the January budget then triggers a series of budget subcommittee hearings from February through about mid-May, when the Department of Finance releases the May revision to the governor's proposed budget. It's also more commonly known as the May revise. June 15th is the constitutional deadline for the legislature to pass the budget. It's important to note, however, that the legislature sometimes defers portions of the budget, such as funding from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, until later in the legislative session, and this sometimes impacts our funding plan development. So where CARB comes into all this is we help inform the Department of Finance and the legislature when they're making their annual budget decisions. And so what do I mean by this? We oftentimes respond to inquiries regarding what our spending status is or what our funding projections are for the upcoming fiscal year. So where we're at with in addition, so like where we're at with previous year's money, how much emission reductions can we get with X amount of dollars, or how many projects we can fund with X amount of funding. CARB also provides testimony during budget hearings and answer questions from the budget committee members. It's important to note that CARB overall doesn't control the budget process. Our role, like other state agencies, is to be supportive of the governor's priorities. And so CARB may make recommendations, but ultimately the governor, through the Department of Finance, is responsible for setting CARB's annual budget for these projects. Separately, in June, CARB holds the kickoff workshop for the funding plan. The launch of the funding plan development process also triggers a series of work group meetings for specific projects or categories of projects that run from June through August. It's also important to note that staff do hold implementation work groups throughout the year, and this is around outside of the funding plan development process as well. So from there, August 31st is the end of the legislative session, meaning any remaining pieces of the budget or amendments to the budget approved in June must be passed by the legislature. Another important thing to note, as this certainly impacts the funding plan development process as well, is the legislative session ends earlier on even numbered years and later on odd number years. So earlier this year for 2023, the legislative session ended on September 14th, whereas next year it will end on August 31st. August is also when CARB holds the second and final funding plan workshop before the board considers the plan in November and then kicks off project implementation in December. So next, I'd like to provide just some resources to help folks stay informed around the state budget process. So this slide shows a list of links for the Department of Finance's timeline and links to the budget subcommittee web pages for both the Senate and Assembly. The subcommittee webpage links provide a list of subcommittee members as well as their contact information and a link to view upcoming hearings. One last note is members of the public can certainly participate in the state budget process. This can be done by engaging with your local representatives, providing public testimony at the budget subcommittee hearings, to submitting written testimony, or signing up for emails just to simply stay informed. So this concludes my portion of the presentation, and I'd like to hand it back to Matt to open it up for any questions.
Thank you so much. Great and very informative. Thank you for that. We will now open up the floor for everyone to ask questions about the state budget. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the Zoom feature to raise your hand. And again, if you're on the phone, please press #2 to raise your hand. I saw that we did have one question come in at the very end of the last session we weren't able to get to, so we will start there. Alex Peza, your line is now open. You may unmute yourself and begin to speak. Please remember to state your name and affiliation before beginning your comment or question.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alex Pesa, and I'm just curious, is this program in regards to drayage companies in order for us to be able to get incentive programs for clean trucks, meaning the electric trucks going forward?
Not really my role anymore, but I can answer that question. The funding plan does include several incentive programs that can provide funding for zero emission drayage trucks. The largest of which, and the one you're most likely to have heard of, is HVIP, our Clean Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project, which is a point of sale voucher incentive, meaning cash on the hood that reduces the purchase price of an eligible zero emission vehicle. There is also the complement to HVIP for small fleets, which is called ISEF. ISEF provides innovative solutions such as truck as a service and other options at a discounted rate. HVIP also provides elevated voucher incentives for zero emission trucks deployed in drayage, those deployed in disadvantaged communities, and those purchased or leased by small fleets. So I'd recommend that you start at californiahfip.org, which has a lot of information on funding that is available now for incentivized purchases of zero emission drayage trucks. You can also find information on that website about ISEF, Innovative Small E-Fleets. And there are other programs that are not a part of the funding plan for clean transportation incentives, such as the Carl Moyer program, but your best starting place is going to be with HFIP. Again, that's californiahfip.org, and I'll put that link in the chat as well. And Alex, in case I missed it, could you please state your affiliation again?
It's Thunder Transport.
Great, thank you. I will also mention that in the coming year, in the spring, the implementation work groups will be happening for HFIP and ISEF. This is where they will be discussing how to actually actualize the policies that were approved as part of the fiscal year 2023-24 funding plan that was approved by the board in November. So do be sure to get onto the email list, which you can find on the California HFIP webpage. And we'll also share some information, I think, about ISEF and another great resource called Cal Fleet Advisor, which is designed to help fleets access incentives, figure out how best to implement zero emission vehicles into their fleet, and connect them with infrastructure resources as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I will put into the chat a link to our ZEV truck stop webpage, which has information on incentives for zero emission trucks. And a reminder to all, if you would like to ask a question or comment, please press the raise hand button in Zoom or press #2 if you're on the phone.
One other thing I'd like to mention, as Stephanie mentioned previously, we do have an open door policy. So folks, I encourage you to reach out to me directly if you have any questions on the state budget process. That is also an option as well. Matt, if you could drop my email address in the chat as well, just if folks are more comfortable reaching out one-on-one to ask questions around the budget process.
Sure thing, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Not seeing any further questions or comments, we will move on to the next part of tonight's presentation. I'd like to ask Lisa Kilodikis to join us. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Matt. Okay, well, thanks, Matt. It's nice to be here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Kilodikis, and I work here at CARB on some of the programs that regulate emissions from light-duty cars and trucks. Tonight, I'd like to provide an update on a new regulatory process we are launching to amend parts of the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulations. Next slide, please. Let's see here. So before I dive into the Advanced Clean Cars 2 program and our updates, I want to start with why we are talking about addressing pollution from cars and trucks in the first place. Transportation, in particular light-duty vehicles, is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, which cause climate change, and is one of the biggest contributors to smog-forming emissions that lead to bad air quality. Next slide, please. Here at CARB, we address vehicle pollution in several ways. I know many of you have been engaged with CARB's process to develop the funding plan for incentives. This plays a big role in helping bring cleaner technologies to communities that need them and accelerating progress on addressing these emissions. We also have a regulatory program, our regulatory programs like Advanced Clean Cars 2 that set minimum requirements for engines and vehicles to control the pollution. I also want to mention that we work closely with a lot of partners, other state agencies and nonprofit organizations to help achieve our goals in advancing zero-emission vehicle technologies and reducing transportation emissions in a way that is successful and equitable. So in the regulatory world, there's been a lot of activity recently with regard to passenger cars and trucks. Last year, the board adopted the Advanced Clean Cars 2 or ACC2 program. The Advanced Clean Cars 2 program includes several elements that work together to reduce emissions from California's new vehicles. First, ACC2 requires that an increasing percentage of new vehicle sales meet a zero emission vehicle standard beginning in the model year 2026, ramping up from 35% of sales to 100% of sales by 2035, by the 2035 model year. Cars that meet the standard include battery electric, plug-in hybrid electric, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Second, recognizing that not just the quantity of ZEVs is important, but also the quality of ZEVs will be key to the growing market and securing emission reductions. Advanced Clean Cars 2 includes a suite of what we call ZEV assurance measures that are designed to give drivers confidence in relying on new and used zero-emission cars and trucks. This includes standards like meaningful battery warranties and transparency for drivers about the health of their battery. In ACC2, we also updated the low emission vehicle or criteria, or LEV, also known as LEV, criteria air pollutant standards to continue to clean up conventional internal combustion engines to reduce exposure to vehicle pollution. Now, there's one piece of the pie here, and that's our greenhouse gas standards that I haven't talked about. So in addition to the ZEV regulation, the greenhouse gas standards reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the light-duty vehicle fleet. And this was a program element that was not updated as part of the ACC2 rulemaking. Next slide, please. So why are we amending the suite of regulations that we just adopted? First, as I just mentioned, we did not update the greenhouse gas regulations as part of ACC2. So we are now thinking through new requirements to achieve additional greenhouse gas emission reductions from cars and light trucks. These reductions are important to support continued progress towards the state's ambitious climate goals. There's also been a new proposal from the federal government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution from vehicles. So we'll be looking at their final rule to consider what elements of our regulations we would update. Lastly, we're using this as an opportunity to consider a new consumer-focused zero-emission vehicle measure, some new measures, including requirements to help improve the public charging experience and new metrics to include on a vehicle window sticker for those considering buying a new ZEV. So next slide, please. So just a little bit on the timeline for this process. We kicked off this amendment process with a public workshop last month, and we have a public comment period that's open now to get initial feedback on priorities for this rulemaking. As we continue to develop our policies, we plan to host a series of workshops and community meetings to provide information and get feedback on our regulatory proposals and other topics. We'd really be interested to hear what topics would be of the most interest to you all in the space and what kinds of meetings and meeting formats would be most accessible. We expect to take the amendments to the board in the summer or fall of 2025. So as with the original Advanced Clean Cars 2 rulemaking process, having a transparent and open outreach process is an important priority for us to coordinate with stakeholders, especially communities that are disproportionately impacted by vehicle pollution. As we develop our community outreach plans, we are building on the lessons learned from previous outreach processes. Things like making enough time in the process to get thoughtful input from community members and providing materials that are responsive to community priorities. We also want to leverage existing meetings and processes. That's why we're here today. And we're seeking one-on-one meetings to learn about interests and priorities and provide a more and get input on that. So if anyone is interested in hearing more or having us to talk about the upcoming meetings, please email Zev. I think next slide, please. oh, no, never mind. Please email zevequity@arb.ca.gov. And now I'll be turning it over to Natalie Reevy, who will talk about an effort we're focused on increasing access to ZEVs in overburdened communities. Natalie.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. So as Lisa said, my name is Natalie Reevy. We're working on another effort to increase access to ZEVs. So the ZEV Equity Task Force was formed in May 2023 in response to direction from CARB's board through language in the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulations to expand low-income and disadvantaged community access to ZEVs and zero-emission mobility. So really the primary objective of our task force is to expedite the deployment of ZEVs and charging infrastructure in low-income and disadvantaged communities throughout the state. And the task force is working to accomplish this by forming partnerships that lead to tangible projects on the ground, meaningful policies and programs, and improvements to state-level government processes, kind of ultimately all these things leading to increasing access to ZEVs and zero-emission mobility. So the ZEV Equity Task Force meetings convene multiple times a year and bringing together representatives from various sectors involved in zero-emission vehicles and zero-emission mobility. So during these meetings, participants kind of collectively share information on initiatives and projects that they're working on, as well as to devise strategies and partnerships moving forward to increase ZEV adoption in disadvantaged and low-income communities. So as I mentioned, the task force was formed in May of 2023, and one outcome from that first task force meeting was to form these smaller working groups to kind of think about and work on specific project areas. So the work groups include an infrastructure work group, a community mobility projects and incentives work group, and outreach and education work group. So that was a really brief overview. But if you'd like more information on the task force or these smaller working groups, please feel free to check out the ZEV Equity Task Force website, which Matt just dropped a link in the chat, or email us at zevequity@arb.ca.gov. Thanks, Matt. I think I'm handing it back to Matt now for comments and questions.
Yes, thank you both for the presentation. We will now open it up again for comments or questions about the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation and the Zero Emission Vehicle Equity Task Force, or ZEV Equity Task Force. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please use the webinar feature to raise your hand. If you are using Zoom on the mobile application, please click on the raise hand option in the More tab. And if you're on the phone, please press #2. And we'll call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. We'll give it a minute for any raised hands to come in. We do have a raised hand. This is from the phone. So caller with your phone number ending in 7545. I have opened your line. You may need to unmute yourself as well. Please state your name and affiliation before beginning your comment or question. Caller ending 7545. Your line is open.
Oh,
but
sorry.
we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Edgar Becerra, citizen in La Habra. And interested in low-speed vehicles and just making sure that there's programs in the equity section to make sure that there's routes between residential and commercial areas within neighborhoods. So an example would be in my area, it's not an option to use a low-speed vehicle because there's too many 40-mile-per-hour roads. And so the transportation option is not available in that particular case.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. That's a really good thing to bring to our attention, and I'm sure that's you're probably not the only community, but sounds like that's something we should probably talk to another agency about. So we would be happy to reach out. It sounds like maybe I don't know which I could just speculate, but I think it's probably not a great idea. So I'm sure we can figure out who we can reach out to about that. I'm not sure what authority we have, but I think it's worth those partnerships and working with other agencies to move this, ZEV transportation forward. So I'm sure I can, talk to our colleagues here and we can figure out who we can talk to. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
If you do have a comment or question, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or press pound 2 if you're on the phone. I'm not seeing any further questions at this time. This does bring us to our first break of the evening. So we'll take a 5-minute break for everyone to stretch their legs and get comfortable, and we will see you all back here at 6:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Oh, I should turn on my camera also. This is Stephanie, and it's now 6:10, so welcome back from our quick break. Hope that was refreshing for you. And before we move on to our next segment, I just wanted to ask the person who had asked a question a few minutes ago, the phone number, I believe it was the phone number ending in 7545. We didn't quite catch your first and last name. If you are able to unmute yourself, and then on our end, we might need to also unmute you so that you could please repeat that for us for the record. Or, oh no, you don't have access to the chat. Okay, well, we'll move on for right now, and maybe we'll be able to get your name later on, or you could always also email it to clean.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Hi, this is Edgar, Edgar, last name Becerra, Becerra.
Great.
And yeah, my comment was really perhaps around infrastructure related to neighborhood electric vehicles, low-speed vehicles, and making sure we have that connectivity between our residential areas and our commercial areas within neighborhoods and cities.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that comment and concern. That's much appreciated. Thanks.
If you do want to throw some money at incentives for those types of vehicles, that would be great too.
Okay, we'll make a note of that as well. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Okay. Okay, so now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Sean Ransom, to talk about e-bikes.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. And good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Ransom, and I'm the lead staff for the California e-bike incentive project. The next 2 slides, I'm going to give you guys a quick update on what we've been up to. All right, so currently total funding is $13 million for the project, and we recently approved $18 million at our board hearing in November. A little bit about the eligibility. Eligible applicants can receive a $1,000 voucher towards the purchase of an e-bike and accessories such as locks, helmets, and safety equipment. We have an additional $250 available to priority applicants, which I'll go over shortly here, and an additional $750 available for cargo or adaptive e-bikes. And a max voucher amount would be $2,000. So all applicants must meet the income threshold of 300% of the federal poverty level or below. Priority applicants, as I mentioned above, can either have an income at 225% or below of FPL, or reside in a disadvantaged community, or reside in a low-income community. All three classes of e-bikes are eligible, class 1, 2, and 3. And we are allowing both brick and mortar and online entities to be eligible as approved retailers. Those retailers must have either a corporate office in California, storefront presence, products sold in California, or California-based manufacturing. All right, next slide. So the California e-bike incentive project is currently working through our soft launch phase. This includes working with 4 communities across California, and those communities are the East Bay area, Fresno, San Diego, and tribal governments. The soft launch aims to provide robust outreach to residents through work with local community-based organizations, which includes providing resources, application assistance, provide a wider variety of e-bike options and retailers, and ensure an efficient application process. The soft launch will also help us test our systems and address any programmatic issues ahead of the statewide launch later this year. So once the soft launch is completed and we have tested all of our systems, staff and the project administrator will begin expanding our outreach and retailer networks. And this includes onboarding e-bike retailers throughout the state and online retailers, and working with community-based organizations, both through the project. And I'd also like to mention that we are working with Access Clean California to leverage their community-based organization network. This work will help us ensure that the California e-bike incentive project is providing California residents with a wide range of e-bike options to fit their needs and opportunities to prepare applicants for the statewide launch. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Nguyen. I'm one of the lead staff persons over on the statewide Clean Cars for All program. We wanted to take this opportunity to share a few updates. So the Community Housing Development Corporation, also known as CHDC, has been selected as the statewide Clean Cars for All and financing program administrator that was selected through a competitive solicitation and program grant has been executed as of November 17th, 2023. CHDC has begun work to coordinate with program partners and community-based organizations towards the implementation of the program, and alongside CARB will be providing updates through community meetings and program work groups. The statewide program is expected to begin rollout in spring or summer of 2024. In the meantime, CARB, CHDC, and the 5 major air districts are continuously working to ensure that all Clean Cars for All programs are available to consumers. As a side note, we would like to inform folks that the IRS has since ruled that incentives issued to low-income participants are not considered taxable income. Therefore, Forms 1099s are not required to be issued to participants of the Clean Cars for All program. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it back over to Matt to go ahead and for comments and questions. Thank you.
Hi, Edgar again. I would just, I don't qualify for an e-bike rebate, but I did buy an e-bike online earlier this month and had a really bad experience with the online retailer. And so I just caution and or put strict rules on sort of warranty service. The bike arrived, it didn't work. It's been a little over 10 days of just like not getting proper support for making sure that the bike is operational and safe. And so, yeah, whatever you can do to make sure that online retailers have a service and support network in state and local, with even if they're domiciled in the California, registered as a corporation here, they may have overseas support, and just not really well. Offline, I can tell you which one it is, but anyway, that's my comment. Be careful with the online guys.
Yeah, and thank you for your comment. We do think through that and have had discussions about it. And we are requiring that the e-bikes arrive fully assembled. So those assembly fees can be part of the incentive as well. So we want to make sure everyone gets a fully operational e-bike. We don't want anyone having to build anything after they received it or anything like that. So, and certainly the maintenance and care afterwards, we're looking at ways to create more robust networks for everyone as well. So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my bike came assembled except for the front wheel. I put it on. It just still didn't work.
Yeah. Happy to talk offline as well. If you want to talk more about that experience, or maybe let me know.
Sounds good.
Matt, you're on mute.
Appreciate that. All right, not seeing any more raised hands at this time, but we'll give it one more shot. If you do have a comment or question about the e-bike project and statewide Clean Cars for All and financing assistance projects, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press #2.
So while we're waiting for additional raised hands, we did get a question that came in through our email inbox. The question came from Ophelia Sizgetti, and her question is, I participated in the evening community meeting reflections on the fiscal year 2023-24 funding plan development process and planning for next year. During the meeting, there was a reference to public work groups. I'm inquiring about the existence of professional stakeholder work groups organized by CARB. Any details or insights on this matter are greatly appreciated. So thanks for your question, Ophelia. So for the funding plan, we have a set of work groups, pardon me. My dog is playing with her toy. So for the funding plan development process, we do hold 2 formal workshops throughout the year. And so in terms of the working groups, we do hold those for either specific projects or project categories. And those meetings are intended to be a little more in the weeds and discussing project parameters, potential proposal for funding, and just program requirements in general. Outside of the funding plan development process, staff also do hold regular implementation work groups as well for their respective projects. And so just wanted to differentiate the two and hope that that answers your question, Ophelia.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so we'll wrap up this comment and question period. Next, I will hand it off to Debbie.
Hi, good evening. My name is Debbie Paselk. I'm the lead staff, and I will be presenting on the Carl Moyer Air Quality Standards Attainment Program, more commonly known as the Carl Moyer Program. The Carl Moyer Program is the longest continuously funded incentive program at CARB, and since its inception in 1989, over $1 billion in program funds have been allocated to our 35 local air districts in the state, which implements the program with the oversight by CARB. For the fiscal year of 2023-2024, the program was allocated 123 million in funds. The program's primary objective is obtaining cost-effective, legally enforceable, and surplus emission reductions that can be credited towards California's State Implementation Plan, also known as the SIP. And for the last 25 years of our program has been successful in reducing smog-forming toxic emissions through the funding of a variety of project types, including on-road heavy-duty vehicles, locomotives, marine vessels, off-road projects such as construction and agricultural equipment replacement, as well as light-duty vehicle retirement. Next slide. Oops. We are currently in the process of undertaking a complete and comprehensive update of the Carl Moyer Program Guideline. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. We are currently in the process of undertaking a complete and comprehensive update of the Carl Moyer Program Guideline. The last revision of the guidelines was in 2017. This update will provide additional flexibility and streamline the program implementation. Earlier today, we held our first public workshop, and in that workshop, we kicked off the public process to revise the Moyer guidelines and took questions and comments from the attendees on the program guidance and areas where they would like to see change. We are planning on additional workshops and work group meetings, and they will occur in early 2024. And we are expecting board consideration in June of 2024. If you would like more information about the Carl Moyer program, be sure to check out these links that are on the slide here for our web pages, where you can find more program information such as current and past versions of our guidelines, program statistics, and other resources. And lastly, if you have any questions or comments for the Moyer staff, please contact us via the program email here, which is moyerhelp@arb.ca.gov. And then I guess I'll hand it over to Farmer.
Thanks, Debbie. Hello, everyone. Let me see. Hello, I'm Evan Powers, and I'm one of the staff here at CARB who work on the Farmer program. I'm here to tell you about our plan for some upcoming changes in the program and to answer any questions you may have. But first, I'd like to provide a little bit of background on the program. So in fiscal year 2017-18, the California State Legislature appropriated $135 million to CARB to reduce ag sector emissions. Subsequently, CARB staff developed the Funding Agricultural Replacement Measures for Emission Reductions Program, or Farmer program in short. And the guidelines were subsequently approved shortly thereafter in March of 2018. Over the last 6 years, the Farmer program has received continued support from the legislature and has been appropriated a total of about $760 million. Generally, the Farmer program is a scrap and replace program administered similarly to the Carl Moyer program, in that the funding is distributed amongst the local air districts for implementation. However, Farmer funding is specific to replacing vehicles and equipment used at agricultural operations as defined in our guidelines. Next slide, please. So currently, in addition to our original guidelines, there have been several revisions to project categories that reside in multiple different documents. We've also received requests for potential updates and changes to the program. Thus, we are considering updates to the Farmer program guidelines to develop a single comprehensive document that accounts for necessary admin and project category changes to the current guidelines, provides additional flexibility, and streamlines program implementation for the air districts. We began the update process by participating in a public workshop, as Debbie noted earlier today, to inform folks of our upcoming plan. So our tentative plan, as the slide suggests, is moving forward is to conduct farmer-specific work group meetings in early 2024 to essentially hash out the details of any changes under consideration, culminating in a presentation to CARB's board for consideration at the June 2024 board hearing. So if you wish to participate in this upcoming public process, you can visit the farmer program website listed on the slide. You can then subscribe to bulletins that we send out to inform folks of upcoming public meetings, or simply shoot me an email. My email address is on there. My direct phone number is listed as well as the email to our farmer program. With that, this concludes the farmer portion of this meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I think I'll toss it over to Matt to moderate any questions that come in.
Great, thank you to all of our presenters. We will open it up again to questions or comments about Carl Moyer or the farmer program. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press #2 if you're on the phone. I don't see any questions or comments, no raised hands. So with that, I will hand it back to Stephanie.
Thanks, Matt. So as far as wrapping up and next steps, let's review our schedule. So you'll see that we held the board meeting in November and presented the proposed funding plan to them. And I'd like to thank you for collaborating with us this evening, but also throughout this whole year. We're really appreciative of the time that you've taken out of your regular commitments to share your comments, concerns, and ideas for us to move forward in having a clean transportation and clean mobility options in your various communities throughout the state. As I mentioned earlier, we want to provide as many opportunities that we can for you to collaborate with us. And so these evening community meetings are a great forum for that. And that also you can reach out to us to set up one-on-one meetings. And then our general email box contact will be shown on the next slide as well. So a few quick reminders about upcoming meetings. With the evening community meetings, we do aim to hold those on the third Tuesday of a given month, and that we want to try to offer those as many times as possible that we can throughout the year. Sometimes we'll need to shift those around for our holidays. And right now, it's tentative whether we will have one in January on the 23rd. We're keeping it open as a possibility for right now, just in case something comes up that we need to discuss with you, share with you, collaborate with you on in the next few weeks. But just know that may be canceled, and we may end up with the first one for the year being held in February. So stay tuned for that, and we'll make sure to share information through our listserv. Let's see. It sounds like we may want to have one meeting in January because the governor's proposed budget usually does come out around January 10th, maybe give or take a few days. So we'll have to see what information we get through that that we want to discuss with you about. So what else? Well, you'll note that January 23rd is not the third Tuesday. And so in that case, we did push it back a week because the previous Monday is the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, where many offices are closed, and you know, people may have other things going on. So we wanted to provide a bit of cushion for that. In any case, I think that's it for my notes on this slide. And we can go to the next slide. Oh, you're already ahead of me. So I want to thank everyone again for your collaboration, your comments, your sharing with us this evening. And you can always reach us at our team's email address, cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. And staff dropped that in the chat for you. And then, you know, keeping your inboxes up to date on funding plan process. If you're not already subscribed to our listserv, staff have dropped that into the chat, and you can choose the options that relate to the funding plan or to incentives. And that's a great way to stay up to date. So on behalf of the funding plan team and all of our guests this evening, it was my pleasure to facilitate this discussion with you today, and to, you know, learn more about, you know, what worked with the funding plan this year, ways that we could improve, and to hear your questions on the other incentive projects and the other you know, efforts, projects, and programs that we have going on at CARB. So with that, I hope that everyone has a good evening. Thank you.